The pressure is on. There's been no week more important than this one so far this season. Hopefully, I'm able to help you submit your starting lineup. I don't have to tell you, oh, yeah, you start Bijan, Barkley, Henry, H.N. Mixon, Chase Brown, Gibbs, Kamara, Jacobs, Kyron. You know to start them. I know to start them. I don't want to waste your time. Let's start off with tier 3 with our conversation here. With James Conner, I would have been starting James Conner with my own team, but your boy got a bye, so we're saving him for week 16 where he'll be going up against the Panthers. But regardless, this week you're going up against the New England Patriots, and this is a game where you actually have an implied team total over 25 points for this Arizona Cardinals offense. So this Cardinals offense should be better than what we have seen as of late. And at the same time, if you're referencing what you have with the New England team total, they're only at about 20.5 points. So you actually do have the Cardinals at about 5.5 in terms of the spread right now. So it should be a game in which you do have a considerable amount of rush attempts here. And James Conner has risen his floor with the receiving involvement as well, where over pretty much the past 3 months, James Conner is averaging anywhere from 4 to 5 targets per game. So a super safe play with James Conner. I'm really excited to see what you get. And yeah, you had the 20 fantasy points in a game in which they get boat raced by Seattle this past week. Now going over to David Montgomery, I want to reiterate, this game has an over-under of 55 points. The Bills and Lions project to be the highest scoring game that we have seen all season. Now, of course, it actually won't be, but that's just the projections going into each game. Now, with that being said, I do want to get every Detroit line in our lineup that we can, including Montgomery, but I don't necessarily know if we can rank Montgomery as like a top 5 option or put him in the top 2 tiers, because there is an outside chance that the Detroit Lions lose this game. 99% of the time, you look at a Lions spread, it's like, oh, the Lions are favored by 5 points. Oh, the Lions are favored by 9 points. They'll be able to run the ball consistently in the second half with Gibbs and Montgomery. Here, maybe a game in which they trail, and maybe you actually see a little more Jahmyr Gibbs than usual. Looking at Chuba Hubbard, I don't want to say disrespected him in the rankings last week, because obviously I didn't know that Jonathan Brooks was going to go down immediately, but clearly we ranked him way too low for the fact that the man plays 97% of the snaps and sees 31 total opportunities. Chuba Hubbard absolutely dominates last week after Jonathan Brooks goes down, and it should be the same thing this next week. If you're looking at Hubbard with no Brooks, you also have no Miles Sanders in this backfield. He should have every single touch and be a true 3-down workhorse and somebody that you have to get into your starting lineup. And please correct me if I'm wrong here, but I also believe that this is maybe the first game that we have seen so far this season where you actually do have the Carolina Panthers favored. And in that context, obviously, they are more likely to be able to run the ball against Dallas than what we have seen so far this year. Going over and looking at James Cook, it's a tough matchup on paper against the Detroit Lions where typically you're not able to run the ball. But again, I do want to reiterate, this is a spot in which, one, James Cook has been very good this season despite what we had this past week. James Cook's only had 3 games so far this year with single-digit fantasy points. And if you actually look at the games with 19 or more points, you have 1, 2, 3, 4. So James Cook does give you the ceiling. He's the RB14 in total fantasy points scored this season. Plus he missed a game due to injury back in week 6. You have the receiving involvement, and as well, you have usage inside the red zone. Now, of course, it is going to be something to continue to monitor over the next few weeks. And if James Cook really flops against the Lions, it is going to be a very scary spot because James Cook did only have 8 opportunities in a game in which the Bills completely abandoned the run this past week. Now, going over looking at Breece Hall, it is very difficult to rank him. The latest reports that we have from Schefter saying, oh yeah, they're not shutting down Breece Hall for the season. Thanks, buddy. What I need to know is if Breece Hall is going to be playing this week or not. We just simply haven't had any news. Obviously, I'll be giving y'all an updated flex rankings video on Friday. I will say for now, though, if Breece does play, you need to start Breece Hall. It's a great matchup going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. You do have the Jets as about 3.5-point favorites. It's going to be one of the very few games left on their schedule where the Jets are actually favored. Now, if Breece misses, in terms of Braylon Allen as well as Isaiah Davis, not super excited to play either guy because presumably they will just split the backfield. I'm going over to Jonathan Taylor. Taylor is one of the very few running backs in the NFL that will have legitimately every single touch in his own backfield. And if you're actually looking at the projections on Underdog Fantasy right now, they would say that I'm too low with Jonathan Taylor in these rankings. They have him currently at higher, lower 93.5 total yards and higher, lower at even odds to score a touchdown. Now, my issue with Taylor is you're not going to have any dump-offs from Anthony Richardson. Richardson can run it himself if the pocket collapses. And at the same time, Anthony Richardson is a threat to take rushing touchdowns at the goal line. Plus, you sprinkle on the fact that this is a tough matchup against Denver, where the Indianapolis Colts are underdogs. So I really hope I'm wrong. I have Jonathan Taylor in some key underdog drafts that I really need him to crush this week. So hopefully he blows up, but I am very much worried about the setup here. But if you think, Mason, you're way too low on these rankings, you're more than welcome to go ahead and take the higher 80.5 rushing yards on Underdog Fantasy. Underdog's available in damn near every state. Yes, it's in California. Yes, it's in Texas. Yes, it's in Florida. Yes, it's in New York. You can find that link in the description and comment section. Promo code FLOCK will give you a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, you'll be getting a free Brock Purdy pick, more than less than half a total yard for the Thursday night game. And what I'd actually want to pair that up with is going to be Deebo Samuel to have fewer than 48.5 receiving yards. Now, going over and looking at what we have with Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones does get a bounce back with his overall usage this past week. Obviously, 2 weeks prior, you actually had Aaron Jones only with 5 total carries and 9 total opportunities. This week, however, you get 15 opportunities, 13 carries against the Atlanta Falcons, and Aaron Jones does look like you're not going to have to be worried about him losing his job due to the fumble concerns that you previously had. This matchup against the Chicago Bears, you do have the Minnesota Vikings as heavy favorites. I believe they are favored by about 7.5 to 7 points in this game. So they should be able to run the ball in the second half. Sam Darnold looks great. This is projected out to be one of the higher scoring offenses in the league. And also you have some receiving work for Aaron Jones. I'm going over to Isiah Pacheco. Back-to-back very disappointing performances. We ranked him as a mid RB2 last week as well. Now, I apologize for that, where you do only get the 8 fantasy points. But underlying this, you did have 18 opportunities for Isiah Pacheco. And you do see the opportunities go up from 8 to 18. You see the snaps go up from 37 to 46% of this offense. So you see Pacheco 100% trending in the right direction. The issue is against the Los Angeles Chargers, you simply didn't have the touchdown. Not only did not have the touchdown, but it's just a very tough matchup overall going up against the Chargers. Now, it's a tough matchup going up against Cleveland. You do have an implied team total about 24.5 points here. You actually do have the Kansas City Chiefs only as 4-point favorites. I thought the spread was going to be a little bit wider on this game, but presumably the Chiefs should be able to lead. They should be able to run the ball in the second half here. If you wanted to put Rico Dowdle ahead of Isiah Pacheco, I'm not going to fault you whatsoever. While yes, Rico Dowdle has had the perfect setup over the past 3 weeks, where you go back and look at him against Washington. The Cowboys win that game. So yes, Dowdle's going to have 20 plus opportunities. They beat the Giants in week 13. So yes, Dowdle's going to get 20 plus opportunities. And then Dowdle gets to go up against the worst defense in the NFL with the Cincinnati Bengals. And he looks good and has yet again 20 plus opportunities this past week. He is going to be the running back that sees every single touch in this Dallas Cowboys offense. And the reason that you probably got to start him again this week is it's a phenomenal matchup going up against the Carolina Panthers. So we still believe that you do have a poor offensive output for Dallas overall. But when you're going to get 20 plus opportunities a game in good game environments, which just appears to be one from Rico Dowdle, including some receiving involvement, this is going to be a running back that you have to start. Now, when I say some receiving involvement, I definitely want to make sure we're on the same page. He's not really getting used as a receiver, right? Like if you go through and if you look at what we have seen over the past 5 weeks, he hasn't had a single performance with 15 or more receiving yards. Now, looking at Bucky Irving, it's damn near impossible to rank him right now. Obviously, we are going to be updating the rankings every single day on the site, as well as with the video on Friday. So I'll keep you posted. He only plays 16% of the snaps this past week, then leaves with a back injury. I just don't know the full extent of this injury. I don't know if he's going to be playing or not. I will say, even if he does play, you'd assume that they probably slow roll him a bit, and there is going to be some risk in starting him based off what we saw this past week. Plus, it would be a little bit of a tougher matchup going up against the Chargers. Now, Brian Robinson will be our next back. With Brian Robinson against Tennessee, he only played 47% of the snaps, but it was a complete blowout in week 13. Keep in mind, I mean, you had the Commanders going out there just putting in their backups at the very end of the game. So really the underlying usage with Brian Robinson in comparison to the other running backs in the backfield, not super predictive going into the future. With Brian Robinson, this is also a game where they are heavily favored against the New Orleans Saints. I believe favored by about 7 to 7.5 total points. They should be able to run the ball in the second half. The issue, of course, with Brian Robinson is, one, Jaden Daniels not going to check the ball down very often. In general, Jaden Daniels can run. Jaden Daniels can take rushing touchdowns at the goal line. And Brian Robinson is not a great receiving back. I mean, you haven't seen him have, 15 plus receiving yards since week 1 this season. Now, you had no Isaac Guerendo at practice on Tuesday. The Niners play on Thursday. So I am going to assume, and of course, you know what they say about assuming things, that you have no Isaac Guerendo in this game. And if that's the case, Patrick Taylor, at least from what I can tell right now at the time of this recording, we'll update you if anything changes, looks like he may be the starting running back for the San Francisco 49ers. The Niners project to be one of the highest scoring offenses in the league this week. Now, I think this Niners team has a ton of injuries. A little bit surprised to see that. But again, sportsbooks, they know more than I do. And we're going to trust them when it comes to overall offensive output projections. And what we have seen with the play style of this offense, this coaching scheme, is they are going to use whatever their starting running back is as a feature RB. Whether it's McCaffrey, or this guy that we had never seen before, Jordan Mason. Oh, I guess all of a sudden he's a workhorse. And I have people in the comment section screaming at me that he is some top level talent, even though I think it's more about the scheme. And then we have Isaac Guerendo, a running back 3 on the depth chart, going through and him getting to take over as a 3-down workhorse. And again, we have people screaming in the comment section saying, oh no, it's just Isaac Guerendo super talented. No, I think a lot of it is due to the scheme. And again, I want to reiterate, I'm not sitting here telling you, oh, Patrick Taylor is some great running back. He's this hidden talent that's just sitting as the RB4 on a depth chart for no apparent reason. No, he is in a great scheme. If they use him as a feature back, as they did with the other 2 fill-ins, he should be viable in fantasy. Of course, there's a little bit of a risk. We don't know if they're for sure going to use him in that role until we actually see it. So we're going to have him down here at 22. Now, if Isaac Guerendo does play, it's a good matchup against the Rams. Again, super high projections for this Niners offense. And we saw them use Guerendo as a true 3-down workhorse this past week. So if Guerendo does play, he is a must-start running back and would be in the tier above this. Now, with Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker, I just frankly have no idea how to rank them right now. Don't know the extent of this Walker injury. Don't know if he is going to be able to play week 14. Again, I'll update the rankings every single day on the site. I'll give you the updated flex rankings on Friday. Long story short, as we always say, if Kenneth Walker is out, Zach Charbonnet is a running back 1 in fantasy. If you have no Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet probably moves to be my RB10 this week. Now, if Kenneth Walker does play, it's probably going to be a running back by committee where you're not super excited to start either option. Now, going down to our next tier, Tony Pollard was a very exciting play against the Jacksonville Jaguars because you did have the Tennessee Titans favored by about 5 points in this game. Looked like they were going to be able to run the ball in the second half, and sadly, that fell apart. This Titans offense was absolutely garbage. You did get a ton of work for Pollard where you get the 23 total opportunities, plus you get 124 total yards. But again, you didn't really have a ton of receptions. You had no touchdown, and you actually have only seen a total of 5 touchdowns this season, or I apologize, only 4 touchdowns so far this season for Tony Pollard in a total of 13 games played. And that's the issue, right? When you're stuck in these horrendous offenses. However, Tony Pollard is a phenomenal matchup this week going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. So when the dust settles on a lot of these injuries, don't be surprised whatsoever to actually see Tony Pollard moving up these rankings, where typically we would expect an offense as bad as what you have in Tennessee to project out and see only 15, 16 points scored. But here, sportsbooks are actually putting the Tennessee Titans up at about 21 points with their implied team total, which is almost right in line with what we have with our next running back with Rashad White. Now, with White, if Bucky Irving plays, this is about where I'd put him. Because again, I think you do have the inherent uncertainty, even if Bucky's good to go, similar to what we saw this past week, that maybe he gets pulled, maybe they just use him in a limited capacity. Rashad White this past week does actually see a season-high 76% of the snaps in Tampa, while at the same time, he does get 20 opportunities, which should be the most that he has actually seen since week 1. Now, of course, he drops 25 points with these, but it was a great matchup going up against the Las Vegas Raiders. Here, it would be a much tougher matchup going up against the Los Angeles Chargers, but also based off the receiving usage that you had earlier in the season, if you have no Bucky Irving, I would actually rank Rashad White as a must-start running back this next week. Now, Ramondre Stevenson is a running back that I'm just freaking sick of. This dude has 5 games this season with single-digit fantasy points. And if you're cross-referencing this with 20-plus point games, you get 3. So you really have feast or famine with Ramondre Stevenson. There are very few games where we've had, oh, cool, 15 points. Oh, cool, 16 points. It's kind of all or nothing. I mean, the floor's there. I mean, the floor is not there. The ceiling is. You have a matchup against Arizona where you just saw Zach Charbonnet going nuclear. Yeah, the last 4 games, Ramondre Stevenson hasn't scored a touchdown. Najee Harris will be another running back I have on my team. I have Stevenson, Najee, Swift all on my team. Thank God I don't have to deal with the headache of any of these guys this week. Your boy's on vacation. He's on a bye. But Najee Harris, yeah, there's no way I'd want to play him this week, knowing that the Steelers typically are favored in their games. Typically, they can run the ball in the second half. But here, you're going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. The Steelers have an implied team total of only 19 points and are 4.5-point dogs here against Philly. It's a horrible matchup. DeAndre Swift, also horrendous matchup. DeAndre Swift sees a season-high 79% of the snaps this past week with no Roschon Johnson. So the usage may be appealing, but at the end of the day, the efficiency is going to be horrendous going up against the Minnesota Vikings. Going over to Tyrone Tracy, I know a lot of people are excited about Tracy seeing the 5 receptions, 38 receiving yards this past week. Tracy gets you the 19 fantasy points, plus he came through with the rushing touchdown. However, if you're looking at Tyrone Tracy, the New York Giants project to be the worst offense in the NFL this week with an implied team total of 14.5 points. This isn't just the worst offense in the league. This is the worst projection that you have by a wide margin. The next lowest projection that you have for any offense in the league this week, what I believe is maybe the Jags at like 18 points. No, I think it's the Saints at 18 points. But yeah, the Giants are supposed to be by far and away the worst offense in the league. Going over to Javonte Williams, there's no way in hell I want to start Javonte. Over the past 4 games he's played, he's had 1 game with double-digit fantasy points, and it's because he had the rushing touchdown and some receiving usage. In reality, the volume's fallen off a cliff. You've seen 6, 12, 13, 3 opportunities over the past month. It's been horrendous. Nick Chubb has the worst matchup you can ever ask for going up against the Kansas City Chiefs as a running back. I mean, Nick Chubb's seen 1 game with over 50% of the snaps played over the past month. So clearly when the Browns trail, you're going to get more Jerome Ford than Chubb, and the Browns should be trailing this game, and it's a horrible matchup for any running back. Gus Edwards is a better matchup this week than he did last, getting to go up against Tampa. Gus Edwards lucked himself into a rushing touchdown this past week, but again, Gus Edwards has played a total of 9 games this season, and Gus Edwards has had 3 receiving yards. So I don't know why you would ever be excited to start this dude. Gus Edwards had a total of 0 games with double-digit fantasy points this year. If Jaylen Warren didn't have such a tough matchup going up against Philly, I'd actually put Jaylen Warren ahead of Gus Edwards. Sincere McCormick could also fly up these rankings. The big thing is we're just waiting to get some injury news with Alexander Madison. If Madison's going to go, you probably got to avoid this entire offense, even though it's a good matchup against Atlanta. And then Travis Etienne is in a garbage offense where he's now split in the backfield with Tank Bigsby as well. I mean, if one of the running backs get injured, then I think the other guy becomes appealing. But if both running backs are healthy and they're good to go, I'd rather not start either one just because they're going to take away from each other in a bad offense. But I think that's all I got for you. Again, really do appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out. And if you wanted to tail us on that Deebo Samuel for fewer than 48.5 receiving yards, you can find that over on Underdog Fantasy. Links in the description, links in the comment section. Promo code FLOCK, you'll get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, at the same time, you're going to get a free Brock Purdy pick, more than less than half a total yard for the Thursday night game. And yeah, available in every state. Yes, it's in Texas. Yes, it's in California. Yes, it's in Florida. Yes, it is in New York. But I think that's all I got for you. Really appreciate you and really hope we get to see you out with the live stream later tonight.